This is for all the viewers who say I never use enough color. Hey guys, welcome back to Black Magic Craft. I am pumped about this little project here. It completely exceeded my goals and expectations. I simply set out to make some really neat looking, vibrant, FEYWILD, magical forest style terrain. And I did that. I like the way they look, they're super cool, but I achieved a bunch of other surprise goals. One, I made these completely out of stuff you can buy at the dollar store, or at the dollar store if you're lucky enough to live in Canada and have a Dollarama. Even better is that they didn't involve any painting at all. And they were built super quickly. I mean, it took me a while fumbling around and figuring it out, but I could say you could build these or a couple of these in an hour or two, no problem. And because there's no paint and no drying time of glues or anything, if you had planned a little FEYWILD adventure or encounter in your game, like last minute, couple hours before players show up, you could whip these up, assuming you had the stuff on hand. I love it, I'm pumped about that. This is my favorite thing when I can make something that looks good, is easy, is cheap, is fast. You rarely get all of those things. I didn't originally intend for these to be this sort of cheap and easy build. I started by going to Michael's to look for cool plants and objects that would create a foundation for a magical forest full of crazy weird vegetation. And I did find some stuff, but it was all ridiculously expensive and overpriced, so I just walked out empty-handed. I turned to my old friend Dollarama and was surprised by the amount of great stuff I found for this sort of project. I grabbed anything that I thought might work, as I really didn't have an exact build plan in mind yet. First thing that caught my attention was this reindeer moss. Now, we've all used this stuff before. I think every crafter has some of this moss on hand, but it was the bright pink and purple versions that really caught my eye and was the reason I grabbed these packs. I also found these incredible plastic bonsai trees. I had seen other people buy these in the past, hey Perry, but never managed to find them myself in person. Until this shopping trip, which was absolutely perfect. It's like destiny. We're not doing that. At 4 Canuck bucks a pop, they aren't crazy cheap, but totally worth it for a ready-to-use, great-looking armature. And I'm sure some folks would find a good use for the pots that they come in too, making them a better value. I grabbed some wrapped floral wire too, just in case I wanted to, give some more DIY armatures a go. This is something that I knew would be handy in the future, even if I didn't end up using them here. The plastic decorative flower aisle was also quite fruitful. I picked out 2 bits of sort of like accent flowers that had neat shapes and little pods on them. I figured I could cut them up to make smaller out of this world plants. Oh, and I grabbed some seashells as well, as I thought they might work well as the base shape for some kind of maybe fungus or weird forest creature. Opening up the reindeer moss packs, I was really impressed with just how much variety was in them for a cheap dollar store pack. It was pretty obvious that the brighter lichen would make for excellent otherworldly foliage on top of these plastic bonsai trees. At this point, this is where the wheels in my head started turning about the idea of just using as much of the existing colors on these materials as possible. Something about this would look a little weird though. Despite the armatures having pretty decent looking plastic leaves that would hold flocking pretty well, they look pretty darn fake, especially with the weird colorful moss on top. And if I wanted to go this no painting idea route, well, they'd need to go. The great thing about pulling all of these off though is that I was still left with a ton of small plastic armatures for bushes that are basically as good as the ones you buy from Woodland Scenics, but for like a fraction of the cost. With the bushy plastic removed, the wild colored moss on top looked really cool. These tree bases are really nice despite essentially being cheap plastic toys. The sculpting was acceptable, the shape was great, and they even had a bit of color on them to make them not look like just brown plastic. And they would paint up nicely, but I really wanted to do this like no paint idea, which is something I've never done before. And it's kind of surprising that I was inclined to do it here with such a vibrant, colorful build. Well, that's the great thing about crafting. Sometimes you just jump into it and you don't know where it's going to take you. Now, the trees needed some bases, and sticking with the cheap dollar store theme, I just grabbed some garbage expanded polystyrene. I rarely use this stuff as it's messy, unstable, and can't be carved with any sort of detail. But, just to make some simple mounds for some trees, there's very little reason to waste better quality foam here. And this type of foam would be way too fragile on its own to just be like the bottom of these bases. They needed a more rigid layer underneath, and MDF would be perfect for this. But, if I'm sticking with this dollar store, theme, dollar store foam core would just be quicker and cleaner and in line with the new goals that I'd formed for this build. This whole project is pretty out of character for me, so why did I go down such a colorful and vibrant path? Well, it was thanks to the inspiration from this sweet mini from Cobramode. In an endless sea of 3D miniature Patreons, Cobramode stands out. They have arguably the most distinctive and unique sculpting style in the entire industry. And this two-person studio offers characters full of life and personality that are sure to inspire GMs and players alike. The models they provide aren't just simple characters. They're each a piece of art full of interesting details. And they manage to push the limits of design and weirdness while ensuring each model is perfectly suited for at-home printing. These models, of course, all come pre-supported, making them a breeze to get going on the printer. And they also come with a cool backstory to use in your campaigns after you've printed them out. I printed and painted this mage model that comes cut and keyed in multiple parts, making it easy to paint in sub-assemblies if that's how you like to work. If you want to get a hold of some of their models, you can do so individually on myminifactory.com, but you are best off joining their Patreon to get access to their full sets of monthly models and all the accompanying lore. I'll put links in the video description so you can check them out for yourself. Thanks Cobramode for supporting creative people like myself and my viewers. In the past, I've kind of internally scoffed at the idea of using these craft store mosses in bulk, in their natural form for ground cover, just gluing it on and calling it done. I always thought it just kind of looks, not right. It makes projects look a little bit like something that should be in the fairy garden section of the craft store rather than on the gaming table. But what project would be more suited for something that looked like a fairy garden than some FEYWILD scatter terrain? These packs had some moss that was basically just like solid sheets, which meant they were super easy to just hot glue and drape over the styrofoam form. And I just used hot glue so that everything set up immediately. I was really impressed with just how well this actually worked. This process was so different from my usual approaches, and I had a really relaxing time doing it. It reminded me of my earliest memories of crafting any sort of miniature, which was a little nativity scene that I made for my Baba when I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, and I made it with the help of my deity using the same type of moss on a simple wood building. As he was absolutely the most important male figure in my life growing up without a dad, and having lost him several years ago to dementia, it was really nice to feel like I was just back in the old workshop on the farm, building with him on his old wooden workbench. Within a very short period of time, I had a wonderful looking piece of whimsical scatter terrain, and I knew that I was onto something with this no paint idea. So I got to work embellishing the pieces more and more with some of the other items I picked up. These white flowers were perfect. They were made of tiny white foam balls, and if I cut them into small pieces, I could place them all over the base to give a pop of contrast and make the pieces of this world, feel a little bit more alive and unusual. The orange ones I got were a bit too big to use a lot of them, but I snipped off a few and figured they would work well for some kind of really strange fruit plants. The large seashells that I got didn't really work for this project, they're just too big, but the little snail shells just had to go on. Now, they could be painted to look like some sort of strange plant or something, but just as is, they would make cute little creatures living in the trees and on the ground. I had a huge smile on my face placing each one of them, and I was even tempted to give them each their own name. We'll call this one George. And that was really it. I was left with a pile of stuff to save for other projects and 2 really great fun-looking pieces that are unlike anything else I have in my collection. I'm so glad that I decided to do something really out of character for me on this project. I had a blast doing it, and it reminded me how important it is to get out of your comfort zone as a creator, even if just once in a while. It's not just about the vibrant colors in terms of getting out of my comfort zone. These are not durable terrain pieces. Nothing is sealed in with glue. They will definitely shed. They would easily get broken if thrown into a box. And I try to avoid those problems when making terrain, but you know what? It's okay to make some fragile terrain that might shed some moss if you get a big trade-off reward in every other aspect of the project. And I definitely did here. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. This is absolutely something anybody can do, for your gaming. Hell, even for your fairy gardens. I don't know, I might just get my kid to make some of these to decorate her room with and play with some of her toys. They're lovely. I really, really like them. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button. Let me know in the comments section below. If you want to stock up on hobby supplies, say you're just starting out, you're not sure what to get, check out my essential equipment page on blackmagicraft.ca. There I list and explain most of the stuff that I use regularly, and you can buy those items, get the right thing through the links, and help support the channel in the process. Of course, if you really love this channel and the videos that I put out, you want to help me keep making them, there's a really good way you can do that, and that's by supporting the channel on Patreon. I'd love to have you as the newest member of the Black Magic Craft Fellowship. That's it for this one, guys. I'll see you again next video. Freaking cool. That's awesome. You get out of my forest, intruder!